Okay, so we start with the first item of our agenda, call to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the November Track Committee meeting. Thank you for everyone who's participating in person and everyone who joined online. The second item of our agenda is public comment. We begin our meeting with the public comments. Is there anyone present who has a comment to make to the committee? No, there is no one present. Then third item of the agenda is Chair's report. Good afternoon, track members and panelists. In the interest of time, I will briefly mention the topics covered at the September PST board meeting. They authorized the purchase of one additional all-electric bus using money from the recently awarded Low Mill grant from the federal government. Originally, the money was for that bus. Well, originally money was for installing a charger. However, after review of current charging times, staff realized that PSTA didn't need as many chargers as originally requested in the grant, and instead will be using the funds to buy an additional bus. The board also received an update on the community bus plan, an updated version of which will be presented to us today. And the fourth item is Elizabeth Olden, or someone will substitute?
I don't have a sub, so if she comes in, she can give it later.
Okay, we will postpone this one. Action items, I will postpone in case some people come in. Item 6, we'll start with informational items. Our first informational item comes from PST's outstanding communications coordinator, Amanda Boyson, who has spent months working on a comprehensive history of the agency in honor of PST's 40th anniversary, which is this year.
Yay!
Amanda, we can unmute.
She doesn't appear to be muted. Hang in there, Amanda. We can't, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you yet. We're working on it.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Here we go.
Okay, yay. Okay, so did you hear anything I said?
No,
All right, no worries. I will start again. So good evening, track members. My name is Amanda Boyson. I'm the communications coordinator at PSTA. So sorry I couldn't be with you in person. I wanted to share history, not germs. So in light of PSTA's 40-year anniversary, I wanted to put together this high-level look at the history of transit in Pinellas County. As mentioned before, I did a 3-part blog series on our website, which you can check out for more detail about the things I'll be mentioning today. Next slide, please. All right, so public transit first came to Pinellas County in 1885 by way of the Orange Belt Railway, which was led by Russian Captain Peter Demenz. That picture there on the right is a photograph. He's right there at the front of the train. And this train system would affect our entire county and leave its mark in the form of the Pinellas Trail, which was paved. The tracks of the Orange Belt Railway were paved over to create the Pinellas Trail. And in 1888, St. Petersburg would be established by Peter Demenz and John C. Williams. Next slide, please. So aside from trains, really the first public transit that came to this area was the streetcar or the trolley, whichever you prefer. And the streetcar was the sign of a modern city. And it was kind of brought to us by Frank Alston Davis, whose picture you can see there. He sort of brought electricity to this area, and the streetcar was just the next step of that. So in 1901, he started the St. Petersburg and Gulf Railway Company, which would bring in secondhand streetcar streetcars from other areas. And you can see in the picture there on the right, that is streetcar number 1, the very first one in this area for St. Petersburg. So it would arrive in 1902. And then in 1903, it would take its first very loud, very spark-filled journey down the 10-mile track that had been laid down Central Avenue. Next slide, please. And so this began the streetcar era. And I love this picture. This is a trolley on Central Avenue from 1905. Next slide, please. And from there, the lines would expand as real estate speculators wanted streetcar lines right near the expensive properties they were looking to buy. Expansions would follow. The notable lines that would be extended here were to Gulfport, to the south in Bayboro and Big Bayou, to North Shore, and then most notably the Jungle Line, which would take people to Park Street, which was an area that had a pretty considerable nightlife. In these pictures here, the one on the left is 2 streetcars switching at the Gulfport line, and then the right one is a vintage postcard showing the North End car line. Next slide, please. And so if they had system maps back in the day, this is what a system map would look like. This was the whole trolley system from 1904 to 1919. Now, in 1919, the St. Petersburg and Gulf Railway would go bankrupt. And in sort of a modern move for the time, the city of St. Pete would actually buy that train car system at auction and would create the St. Petersburg Municipal Transit System, or SPMTS, a name that you will hear again. Next slide, please. So then begins the era of the bus. So around 1919, the first commercially operated bus would arrive in in Pinellas County, and it was 2 Ford Model Ts welded together in the beginning, but it would eventually take more of a bus form, as you can see in that bottom left picture. And private bus lines started popping up all over the county. There was Clearwater Transit, Inc., there was one in Dunedin, Tarpon Springs, quite a few of them popped up. So from 1926 to 1949, trolleys and buses would actually coexist in the county, which I think is really cool. I would love to see those 2 modes of transit on the street. Next slide, please. But in 1949, the trolley would retire. They had largely fallen out of fashion. They were seen as very noisy, unsightly. They clogged up roadways. So in 1949, the Gulfport line would make its last run. And I love this image because it's got a sign on it that says, "Not dead, just retired." And we know that's true. The trolley would be back. Next slide, please. So by the 60s, bus lines would be popping up in every major city. But what we soon learned is that running a bus line is very expensive, and it really can't be done without help from the government. So in 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed an act that created the Urban Mass Transportation Administration, otherwise known as UMTA. Now, this would later become FTA, the Federal Transit Administration that we know today. But at the time, this sort of opened the doorway for the federal government to fund mass transit projects. So by 1970, the local bus lines here in Pinellas County, especially those in Central and North County, were failing. They were going bankrupt. It was just too expensive to take on public transit in a private capacity. St. Petersburg had its SPMTS line that was subsidized, by the city, but we really needed something for Mid and North County. And so in 1970, CPTA, otherwise known as Central Pinellas Transit Authority, was created and voted on. You can see the sample ballot there, which I was really excited that we were able to get a hold of. Next slide, please. And so there were 2 transit agencies operating side by side in Pinellas County. You had CPTA in North and Central County, and you had SPMTS operating in South County. And these 2 agencies really started to work together. They weren't competitors. They took each other's bus passes and helped with transfers so that people could get up and down the county. And they became even closer when the energy crisis happened in the 70s. So in 1973 and 1979, there were gas shortages caused by oil embargoes. And so motorists weren't able to get gas. They were depending on transit a lot more, but those same fuel rations also affected these 2 transit agencies. But they sort of weathered it together and really developed a sort of affinity with each other. Next slide, please. And so talk started to pop up about a merger. It only made sense, instead of having these two agencies operating side by side, have them unite to be one main transit system for the county. So in 1974, the Mass Transportation Act of 1974 would pass and would allow federal funds to be used for operating subsidies, excuse me. But they would only favor an area that had one system. So finally, the talk of the merger made a lot of sense. So the way that the merger happened, it wasn't really like they kind of came together. The way it happened is CPTA would be renamed to PSTA, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, and they would sort of absorb SPMTS. But of course, this needed to be voted on. So in 1982, the first vote would take place for this merger. And unfortunately, it failed due to not a lot of issue being on the not a lot of information, excuse me, being on the ballots. And the public didn't really understand the merits of the merger. So they kind of took a year to do a big marketing campaign and really educate the public as to why this was a good idea. And in 1983, the second vote was held and it was finally passed. Next slide, please. And so 1984 saw the beginning of PSTA as we know it today. And they would start by, launching new projects. They would open their South Division building in 1988, which is over on 28th Street. And I totally didn't go drive over there like a creep just to go see the building. Next slide, please. And then we're just going to rapid fire through the decades of all the things the PSTA has done. So in the 90s, we saw the Williams Park Customer Service Center open in 1994. This was replacing the 50s SPMTS info booth. In 1996, the magnetically encoded Go cards would launch. Those were around for nearly 30 years, which is crazy to think about. And then in 1997, PSTA would hit its first ridership milestone of its 100 millionth rider. Next slide, please. And then in the 2000s, the trolley would return. So 2001 would see the launch of the Suncoast Beach Trolley. In 2002, the Central Plaza Intermodal Terminal opened. Of course, it would be renamed to the Grand Central Station in 2009. And 2004, we would celebrate our 20-year anniversary with newly branded buses and logo that we still have today. 2005 would see the opening of the building that you guys are sitting in right now. And in 2010 would be the arrival of our first diesel-electric hybrid buses, the smart buses. Next slide, please. So the 2010s would bring a lot more technology being integrated with the agency. So in 2010, the launch of the real-time service, which would show riders when buses would arrive at the terminals. In 2013 and 2014, PSTA embarked on the Greenlight Pinellas initiative, which the purpose of which was to have a different funding source for the agency, which would allow us to start new projects. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but despite that, PSTA continued on with a sort of pioneering partnership with Uber and Lyft through Direct Connect, which would then be expanded for paratransit riders in the form of the Mobility on Demand program, which launched in 2018. And in 2018, we also saw the arrival of our first all-electric buses. Next slide, please. And then I think everyone here knows a lot of these things, but we've got to sing our praises for our 2020s. So in 2020, we received the grant that would fund the Sunrunner, a $21.9 million grant in federal funding. Of course, as we all know, absolutely nothing else happened in the year 2020. And in 2022, the Sunrunner would launch the region's very first bus rapid transit service. In 2023, PSTA would hit another big milestone of winning Best Transit System in the country and the state. And then this past year, we won our largest grant ever, a $27.8 million grant for more electric and hybrid electric buses and chargers, as well as another award through APTA for a collaboration with private sectors. Next slide, please. So the next 40 years of PSTA. What does that look like? Well, we know we've got some cool stuff coming on the horizon. We've got the Clearwater Transit Center. We've got ferries. We've got a new Sunrunner stop. We're currently working on a new website. And then, of course, the next agenda item that you'll hear more about, the community bus plan. And so if you want to hear any more of the details of this whole saga, there is that 3-part series on our website, psta.net/news. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yay!
Very
good, Amanda, thanks.
So we should go back
Yeah,
to
we'll go back
Elizabeth.
and get Elizabeth's.
Elizabeth, are you okay to give your report?
Yes.
Okay, so then we'll give time to Elizabeth to give her Forward Pinellas report.
Okay, before I forget, what caught my eye was there's going to be a review of what they've done on the Pinellas Trail. There are dangerous spots and there's really good spots. There's a name for them, but they're people that go out and take surveys. You know, what are they using the Pinellas Trail for? Shopping, recreation, get to work. But it was interesting, he said, people on their way to work don't have time to stop for a survey because they gotta get to work on time. So, but they're out there and they're getting a lot of information about the Pinellas Trail. So that's gonna be an interesting meeting next time around when they have those people come in that are doing the surveys and getting all the ideas to improve it and make the dangerous spots safer and keep the safe spots safe. So I didn't want to forget that. And then I sent the email, and I'll read it. It's called Fall Update of the Transportation Improvement Program, so TIP. Every fall, Forward Pinellas updates the Transportation Improvement Program, TIP, to include the most recent transportation work projects of the various local governments in the county. Forward Pinellas historically includes the transportation projects in adopted local government capital improvement programs to provide citizens, businesses, and other public agencies with a comprehensive report of the scheduled transportation projects throughout Pinellas County. And this reminds me, we hear it, that Forward Pinellas can't tell local agencies or municipalities what to do, but they can say, did you ever think to ask money for this project? And the city will say, that's a good one. And then they will start from their end, they'll ask for funds and describe the project they want to work on. So Forward Pinellas is working with the cities. But they're not telling them what to do, they're just highly suggesting things to do. And then we hear about, and I love this part, besides the work program tables of the various local governments, the fall update document includes the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. Yay, love that relationship. And Federal Transit Administration, and we heard about that from Amanda just now. Grant program allocations. So that's a quick update. And here, there's a website called Questica Open Book. If anybody's interested, they can find that Bob forwarded that picture to you guys. And the next one, Trends and Conditions Report. Forward Pinellas County-wide Trends and Conditions Report provides an annual snapshot of the county's transportation system, including, and this is what Forward Pinellas is involved in, all kinds of stuff, roads, trails, sidewalks, bike lanes, and transit services. In addition, the report provides data on the economic and land use activity, waterborne transportation, and emerging technologies. The report serves as a tool to evaluate progress toward achieving the objectives of the, and we've heard this before, long-range transportation plan. And that's what Jacob has been working on a lot. Long-range transportation plan, identifying improvements to address safety concerns, congestion problems, inform transportation safety studies, and transportation project design, and target law enforcement activities related to safety. And there's no website to go to on that one. But those are the things that caught my eye, and that's what I can share with you guys, and has been forwarded to you guys. You'll find it in your emails. I'm done.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're
So
welcome.
we have a quorum now, and I would like to go back to action number 5, which is approving August, September, and October 2024 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay, so we have Conrad, and as first, and second is Jay. The motion carries, and the media, so, yeah, do we vote? So you
Yeah.
say yay?
Yay.
And online? Mark? Mark and
Unless we
Marcia?
don't have-
We can't vote unless you give us permission to vote.
You're right.
Oh,
you're
yeah,
right.
you can do that.
So since we have enough here, thank you, Mark. Since we have enough, anyone is opposing, just to know? That way we know that its motion is approved and minutes are approved. Okay, so now we can move to the next, our information item is, our second information item is back again by popular demand is a new update on the PSTA Community Bus Plan from Jordan Rice, Chief of Planning and Community Affairs Officer, and Jacob Labutka, Planning Manager. Hey.
Thank you, thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy that I made it to the sequel. This really is the sequel to Darren's presentation last month, where she provided kind of an overview of kind of where we've been and where we're going with the community bus plan. But today, we really get to dive in and see a lot of the good stuff that has been over a year's worth of planning, outreach, previous meetings with you all. So now we're really excited to take the next step. And I'll emphasize that what you're going to see today are draft recommendations. Over the next few months, we still want to do outreach with you all, with the board, and the broader community and writing public to really make sure that we're hearing comments from the community and our writers on some of the recommendations that we'll present today before it ultimately goes to a board vote in March. And pending approval, we'll then still continue to do outreach in the months leading up to the service launch. So a few high-level things I want to start off with today. So first off, everything that you're going to see in today's presentation is within our budget. So I know there's certainly long-term goals, as you referenced, coordinated with the long-range transportation plan for premium service and corridors like Alternate 19, 4th Street, other corridors where we have core services today. So this really is kind of the incremental step towards that goal. So these are recommendations we would do within a year within our existing budget that would hopefully pave the way for service expansions in the future. So this plan also functions as a network. So in previous times we've done this effort, we've done kind of a multi-phased implementation approach, and we kind of learned from both our own experience and seeing other agencies that really just doesn't work that well. And even though it's going to be a lot of changes, it's better to just do it as a network. And I'll kind of explain over the course of the presentation how this will function even better as a network. And sort of the three C's that we are kind of branding this effort with is that we really want this to be clear, consistent, and connected. So we want this to be clear both for our existing riders and potential new riders with route schedules that are easier to understand. We want to have more consistency because right now, as you all know, many of our routes do not operate 7 days a week. Through this plan, most of our routes would operate 7 days a week. Some of them may have less frequency on Sundays, but even with that, consistency is important in order to have. Oh, excellent! I pressed a button. In order to have a reliable system for individuals, and we also want to have a connected system. So through some changes to route design and timing to help improve how the system functions as a network. And what I primarily mean by that is transfers, because we know that many of our riders need to make transfers. So shown here is a map of our existing network today, which is color-coded by frequency. And I'll take a moment to explain the color coding of the frequencies, since this will be a theme throughout the presentation of how we denote what frequencies are, both in other maps and charts throughout the presentation. So, and you've probably heard this if you've seen other versions of this map before, but everything in red, like our Sunrunner, are routes that arrive every 15 minutes. Everything in blue, like the Route 79, are routes that come every 30 minutes. Routes in green, which the color may be a little weird to see with the little yellow tint here, but the greenish routes, like our Route 62, operate once an hour. The dashed brown lines are our limited express services, particularly our express routes that go to Tampa. And this part is really hard to see, so I'm just gonna have to point to this one. So there, imagine a yellow zone here in Safety Harbor behind the yellow haze, which denotes an on-demand zone. All right, so this is the launch of our connected community bus network. So this is what we are, the brand identity that we've given to this series of recommendations. So I'm going to basically spend this presentation going over, at a high level, 6 themes of changes and considerations for this planning effort. That's the, kind of some themes that have come out through conversations with the public and riders, with you all, with our committees and our boards. So we really tried to capture a lot of feedback that we've gotten, both through this effort, but also just throughout general outreach to the public. So we want to be responsive to the fact that there is more weekend demand and people don't just ride on peaks during the weekdays anymore. We also know that we're a tourist-oriented area, so we have to be want to be mindful and responsive to that, both for tourists, but of course also for workers who rely on services that tourists also ride. We also want to capitalize on our premium core routes and, where possible, expand our offerings of frequent service that operates every 15 minutes or better. We also want to try to increase opportunity and access to jobs, so I'll describe how we're doing that. We also want to decrease travel time through what's called time transfers, so I'll explain that later on. And I'll also explain how this plan is cost neutral and where we're making adjustments to pay for some of the improvements I will be discussing with you all today. So first off, and I'm going to preface this by saying I know this is a lot, and I'm going to explain what all of these very colorful blocks mean. So first off, I want to get into how we're addressing the demand for more weekend service and that people just don't travel in the peak times like in other markets. So I'll first take a moment to explain what this very interesting chart means. So shown here on this chart on the left, so this is a chart that breaks down how frequently our services run and span of service. So each block is an hour of service for each route. So the routes are on the left, and each hour of service is on are the columns. So looking at Route 4, for example, so we know that the Route 4 runs every 15 minutes, which is why it is in red, but then it does drop to every 30 minutes, which is why it drops to blue. And so you can see that color scheme is consistent with the maps that were shown in some of the previous slides. So the real takeaway here is one of the things that we want to do is to improve the span of service 7 days a week, but starting here for a moment, looking at weekdays. So we know, and I definitely know you all know, that many of our routes, while maybe some of our core routes run a little later, some of the supporting local routes, like maybe the Route 11 or the 23, maybe end at like 6, 7 o'clock, and then that's it. So through reallocating some resources, the goal here, so this is the existing, how we have service done today. Shown here is the draft plan of how service will be scheduled in the future. And so what I really want you to pay attention to is this black box. So these are those service hours after 8 p.m. So you'll notice that that black box is a lot more filled in the draft plan. So that's us really trying to, within our existing budget, try to extend the span of service to make it more reliable and consistent across our various routes. We're also trying to do the same thing on the weekends, so on Sundays. So as you all know, many of the routes do not operate on Sundays, which is why you see a lot of gaps in that chart there. But shown on the chart on the right is how we're proposing to have service operate on Sundays. So you see a lot fewer white gaps, which means that pretty much most routes in the system will still operate 7 days a week. So another way to look at this in a maybe slightly less confusing manner is by just a good old-fashioned map. So the map on the left shows routes that are operating at 8 p.m. on a weekday. So you can see that a lot of areas in the county are covered, but there are some notable gaps, such as maybe parts of Pinellas Park and unincorporated county, parts of Clearwater, and Oldsmar, which has no service into the evening hour. The map on the right, you really see some of those gaps I just identified, how those are filled in, and pretty much most places that have service during a noon on a weekday would still have service into, dang it, I did it again. Would have service into the evening in the draft plan. All right, so now that I'm ready to actually show this map. So on here, same deal for Sundays. Map on the left is how we have service allocated today. And shown on the right, you can see a lot of those gaps are filled in. So some many services on Sunday still only run once an hour, but we're providing that more consistent service that people can rely on 7 days a week. Since we know that not everybody works a Monday through Friday job. Some people work Wednesday, Thursday. I'm just gonna put this thing down while I'm not. It's so sensitive.
Maybe on transition.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's I put in an animation somewhere. Oh, that's what I get for playing around with it. Anywho, so we know that we want to be responsive to the fact that people don't just leave Monday through Friday lives and to have more consistent schedules 7 days a week when possible. All right, number 2. We have a variety of services that are going to be planned over the next year plus to be responsive to the fact that we are a tourist destination. So first off, you've probably heard talks about us getting into the ferry service game. So probably starting early next year, we will be partnering with Clearwater Ferry to deploy ferry service out in the Clearwater, Dunedin area. So I will also note for anything that says ferry on here, these are funded through separate funding sources, whether it's FDOT, St. Pete, or other partners. So these are not utilizing funding sources that operate bus routes. So I just want to make that clear right off the bat. And then we're also rearranging how our trolley services operate on Clearwater Beach to operate more efficiently. So I'll explain that more later in the presentation. We're also doing similar operation with the Cross Bay Ferry. We're going to be putting out an RFP in the next few months, and we'll be having a similar relationship with Cross Bay Ferry that we do with the Jolly Trolley. We're also looking to enhance Sunrunner service. Some of you have been downtown, have probably seen the new station that's under construction near the pier. I myself walked by there about a week ago, and it was interesting just seeing like the guts of a station before it was done. So I would highly recommend going by it because it's really interesting just to see the inside of it. And then one day when you were standing on it, you're like, oh, now I know what's underneath me. Anyway, maybe I'm just a nerd, but I think some of you are probably nerds too. We're also looking to do a shuttle pilot from St. Pete Quarter International Airport to Clearwater Beach. And lastly, and this one's more of a long-term initiative, but once the new express lanes are completed from the Howard Franklin Bridge, we would want to put more premium service and more frequent service in between. I did it again. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'm just gonna put my finger, bottom, not aware of the buttons. Okay, looking to do more frequent and premium service in between St. Pete and Tampa, connecting to Tampa International Airport, but that will certainly be a longer term project since we would have to identify additional dollars for that service. All right, next up is that we want to enhance our offerings of premium core routes. So we know that our core routes, those that operate every 15 minutes, are the backbone of our system. They're obviously very reliable. You're less likely to need a schedule because within 15 minutes a bus will show up. So right now we have 3 routes that operate every 15 minutes in our system. So through this plan, that would actually grow to 5. So the 5 routes that would operate every 15 minutes are, of course, the Sunrunner, the Route 4, a change in Central County. So right now we have service we're operating every 15 minutes on Almerton. So I'll get into this later. So we'd be looking to scale back the frequency on that service, but we would be shifting that to the northern portion of the existing Route 52 that has a lot more ridership per service hour than service on Almerton. And we also know there's a lot of redevelopment efforts going on Bay Drive right now. So we've been talking to the city of Largo about it. So we think that frequent service would be better. Oh, okay, I didn't even press anything this time, y'all. There's a ghost. Okay. Anyway, that premium service would do better there on Bay Drive. We're also looking to launch our Spark service, which will be a very frequent service that is the southern portion of the Route 34 in between Grand Central and Eckerd College. And then on Clearwater Beach, so we're going to be reallocating our existing services today to where you have an effective 15-minute frequency out on Clearwater Beach. So today we have the Suncoast Beach Trolley and the Jolly Trolley South Beach route, but they're not really coordinated that well. You might have one that leaves top of the hour and another one that leaves 5 minutes later, and thus the process repeats. So we really want to stagger the schedule so you have more consistent and reliable frequency out on the beach with our existing resources. So again, we really want to help, in an incremental fashion within our existing budget, expand this map to where maybe in the future there's even more offerings of services every 15 minutes, but I think this is a step in the right direction. Next up is increasing access to opportunity. And a good way to measure how people can access opportunity via transit is increasing access to jobs. So I'll explain this chart here for a moment. So this shows the average number of jobs that a typical resident can reach within 1 hour on transit. So we show that with our existing network in gray and our draft network in orange. And we also show that for both the typical resident on the left, but we also show that for populations that are more likely to use transit than the average resident. So we also show that for residents of color, low-income residents, and households without vehicles. So big takeaway here is that, I swear to y'all the ghost is back. Okay, let's go back here for a moment. So in the evenings, a typical resident can access just over 25,000 jobs on transit today. But because of how we're expanding our service offerings in the evenings, that number will go up 24% for the average resident. And that number will be even higher for residents of color and households without cars that'll see increases of access to jobs of 26 and 27% respectively. And on Sundays, we see similar increases. On average, there are fewer jobs accessible within an hour just because, as you all know, transit does tend to operate less frequently on Sundays. However, because of the fact that we're increasing service bands on routes that don't have any Sunday service today, we are pretty significantly increasing the availability of access to jobs within an hour by about 24% across the board. So next up, we are wanting to decrease transit travel times through something called time transfers at select locations. So shown here is just an example of a typical transit trip. So this is showing how the 73 that runs once an hour, somebody might take that to connect to the Jolly Trolley Coastal at Park Street Terminal in downtown Clearwater. So somebody waits for the bus. You might have to wait. I mean, obviously, if you have transit app or something, you might be able to schedule when you arrive at a bus stop, but if you have a time-sensitive job, start time, maybe not. So let's just say we have an average wait time of 30 minutes at a bus stop. Then you get to the terminal, and then you might have to wait a while for your connection, especially if the other route only operates once an hour. So let's say you're waiting up to 30 minutes there, and then you finish your journey. So through time transfers, what we're hoping to achieve at certain locations like Park Street Terminal is to schedule routes like these that come every hour and 30 minutes to arrive at the same location within a similar window. And then it would give riders about 5 to 10 minutes to transfer, and then all of the buses would leave at the same time. So in this transit journey, that waiting for up to 30 minutes or even more at Park Street Terminal might be more like waiting 5 or 10 minutes, which would decrease the total travel time by 20 to 25 minutes, if not more. So we're looking to see how we can do this at select locations like Park Street Terminal, downtown St. Pete, Largo Transit Center. We would love to do it everywhere, but the challenge with, I swear I did not press it, the challenge with doing it everywhere is that we have some routes that touch multiple terminals, so you couldn't do a time transfer for, say, routes that go to Clearwater Transit Center and Grand Central. So we're trying to be strategic about how we pick these locations, but also trying to make sure they're throughout the county in a way that we can help improve the transit connection for as many individuals as possible. So I know we've covered a lot so far, but we talked about how we're improving weekend demand, being responsive to tourists, capitalizing on our core services, increasing access to jobs, and decreasing travel time. So that's all really great stuff. But to pay for all of this stuff and to keep it cost neutral, we do have to make trade-offs from somewhere. So I do want to spend a minute talking about some of the alterations to service that are funding some of these improvements I just went through. So first off, so like I mentioned before, we know that the nature of how people travel is changing, and it's not necessarily, super peak reliant like it used to be. And a lot of our routes do have flat frequencies, but we still do have a few routes that have slightly more frequency in the peak times, like routes 34 and 18 that operate every 20 minutes at certain times of day. So in order to provide that consistency and to fund some of those improvements I mentioned, so those routes would just operate every 30 minutes for the entire day and not have a peak frequency. And we would also no longer be offering the Route 52 LX, but we would still be maintaining local service throughout the entire corridor, and the northern portion of the Route 52 would see frequency basically doubled every 15 minutes. And in addition, we have a couple of routes where we are looking to reduce the frequency, but also looking to, but still increase the span of service. There's a few routes that, for the level of ridership, we want to make sure that the demand for a route matches its frequency. So we know that certain routes, for the level of service that they have, don't maybe have as much ridership as comparable routes. So a few routes where we are going to dial back the frequency on are routes like the 23, the 59, and the 74. So we're not going to be eliminating service, but we will be slightly dialing back the frequency on those. And so so these are, by and large, the trade-offs that we're looking at of how we're going to be able to afford this expansion of service on nights and weekends that I went into. But that being said, we want to give special attention to this when we do our outreach and making sure that people who may be affected by this know about this and we hear from them and make sure they can still work around these changes. Certainly something to keep in mind during that process. So a few next steps. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing outreach from pretty much right now. And then tomorrow is going to be the official launch of this outreach period. We're going to be doing a community-wide survey and going out to meetings like this and basically doing this same presentation to let folks know about the draft network changes. And then we're looking to make alterations based on public input in January, do public hearings in February with a board vote in March. And then if approved by the board, we would still do outreach and workshops for the months following that, because this is obviously a lot of changes we are proposing. And so we want to make sure that even after the plan is finalized, that we're working with our riders in the community to inform them on the various changes. So I know I just threw a whole lot at you. There's a lot to digest, and there's a lot more than what I was able to cover in this presentation. So I will just make sure that you all know that within your packet, there is a report that really dives into a lot more detail on some of these recommendations. And we also uploaded a few documents to our the bus plan website. So we have a report for each 3 phases of engagement that we've done for this project. And we also, if you're interested, at the beginning of this effort, we did an onboard survey of the statistical profiles of basically who is riding what routes. What is age breakdown, income breakdown. So you could even see that report route by route as well. So there's a whole wealth of information that we've made available that you can look into related to this. But with that, I will pause, and I will be happy to take any comments, questions, or if there's any places that you think that we should be doing outreach in the next coming weeks, happy to take that as well. Yes, sir.
I didn't see the 100
Oh,
and the 300 and the 812 in your, where you went from the
yeah, it's mainly
way
just.
back when.
Yeah, I think you're referring to this
Yeah,
chart.
yeah, there.
Yeah, this just shows some of the routes. It was just a space issue.
Oh.
But these would still, so to point that out specifically on the map, so we're still going to maintain our express routes. And then an interesting thing regarding the 812, the 812 would technically no longer exist, but what it would become is a variant of the Route 78, to where under this plan, you would actually have a 1-seat ride from downtown Clearwater to Tampa once an hour.
So is it still gonna go to Boot Ranch?
I believe that 78A variant, I'll have to look closer on the plan, but it looks like it would go to Boot Ranch.
So, and then it's still gonna go to Northwest?
Yes,
And it's gonna go 7 days a week?
yes.
And to what time?
So that has not been finalized. Probably right now, I think a lot of the routes have an assumption of maybe 8 o'clock ending time on Sundays. But probably through this outreach process, we're really going to firm up and based on input from the public, what those operating hours look like. I know something that we've heard already from meeting with our operators union is that, we do have kind of flat frequencies. Wait, go back, any slides. So we do have like flat frequencies shown like on the weekdays and Sundays in the draft plan, but in so doing that, there are a few routes where under this plan, service would end a little earlier than what exists today on some core routes. So I think what it may ultimately look like is that even on the weekends, we would continue to operate our core routes slightly later than some of the routes that run once an hour.
So we'll be able to go Monday through 7 days a week on the 812?
Yep, on this plan.
How will that affect the 100 and 300?
Oh, so I will say, those are the exceptions to the 7-day-a-week rule. So unfortunately, those would basically have the same schedule as
Still
today.
Monday through Friday?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have Mark, he raised
Oh,
his-
yes, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, I'm so glad to see this presentation. I think you and your team did a wonderful job of being able to not only, stay in some of our needed neighborhoods here in Pinellas County, but also increase frequency in key corridors like 4, 20, 52, 34. I think that's just wonderful. Is there, maybe this is included and I just didn't see it because of how it's going to be rerouted, but, as for a matter of personal preference is, I'm someone who has to travel from Gulfport all the way up here to Carillon where, the neighborhood that PSTA is in, and so is my office. And, it takes an hour and a half right now by bus. Do you think that with these changes, the time will change where you'll be able to just take a Route 4 on a more faster basis from the south side up here to the Carillon area?
No, that's a great question. I will say, I would certainly love to introduce faster premium services. So the Route 4 would probably operate pretty similarly to how it does today, because the only way that you could make a service like that faster would be either significantly reducing stop spacing or kind of like on the Sunrunner, how it has, semi-exclusive lanes. So I wish I could say that your travel time experience might improve, but it'll likely stay around the same. That being said, hopefully, if your connection involves going through downtown at all, you might be able to benefit from what we're trying to do with time transfers, which might help save you a few minutes, but I think it just depends on, where exactly you're going and coming from.
And you mentioned something else that I've been wanting to bring up, and I keep forgetting, and that's about the stop balancing. That's something that they've been recently doing in Buffalo, and I see a lot about it. Is that something that would be part of the community bus plan too, or would that be like maybe the next study that you guys would work on once this one is signed, sealed, and delivered?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and it wasn't a part of this presentation, because it obviously gets really into the nitty-gritty of like route by route, stop by stop. But I think something that we would do alongside with our scheduling team when we're actually doing like creating the schedules and how this would actually operate, the planning team would then utilize, we actually have a tool, a stop spacing tool provided by our consultant team, and we would leverage that to try to find low-hanging fruit for stops that we could remove based on demand to try to but while still having decent stop spacing. I will say a fun fact I've learned throughout this effort. We have a lot of bus stops in our system. So I think Hart, for example, has maybe 2,400 stops. We have about 2,000 more than that. Wow. We have, for agency our size, we have so many bus stops. It's just lots of bus stops. So I will say through these recommendations right off the bat, we probably would be leaving about maybe 500-600 bus stops, give or take. Most of them have lower ridership and only a few of them have shelters. But even with that, we would still have like 3,700 bus stops, which is still a lot more than our peers. So I think, like I said, with this effort, that's certainly something we're going to be taking a look at, opportunities for bus stop balancing or consolidation or whatever your preferred term is.
We brought this up before, but with that bus stop balancing and everything, are you all going to continue to look at the way the buses stop at Gateway Mall and don't complete their routes, and they stop at the post office instead of going back down?
That's
and you know
Yeah, I
what
mean, I will say that's not necessarily related to the spacing of bus stops, but it's something we can continue to take a look at, especially as we've been meeting regularly with the union and other folks in operations. We can certainly continue to bring that issue up.
Okay.
I saw your answer.
So is the 7 being eliminated?
So, not eliminated, but changed. So that, so it's kind of interesting. Let me go over here and point here for a moment. So in South St. Pete, the 7 and the 15 will essentially become parts of the 9. So the 9, instead of going north from Grand Central, so the 5 would kind of do what it used to do and stay on Fifth Avenue North and go down to Grand Central. But under this plan, the 9 would go south into South St. Pete every 30 minutes, and then would kind of split off into different areas of the neighborhood, kind of like the 7 and the 15 do today, and then would kind of rejoin up here. And then where other parts of where the 7 and the 15 are served today are served by other routes with a connection to Grand Central.
So if the main library ever reopens, there's not going to be a route that serves the library?
I believe that would be served by, under this plan, this would be the 29 on this plan, but there would still be service on 9th Avenue North in this plan by the main library.
Okay.
Can we get this packet? I realized that we didn't receive an agenda.
Nope, this is your one and only opportunity. I'm kidding. No, no, this should be included in your packet. No, because you're probably going to want to look at this later, zoom in and see your particular area. So if there are any comments or questions you have after today, I mean, I certainly would invite you all to take the survey and let everybody know, your friends, your neighbors, your enemies know about the survey that's out. But if you have any particular comments or questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Yes, Bob?
Yeah, tomorrow after the committee meeting, Jacob mentioned he's gonna launch the survey. So at the same time, I will be sending you all the website where it resides, and all of this is on the website. And it's a lot easier to read. They're PDFs, you can download them, blow them up, see much easier than just the PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay. Hold on. So if I'm understanding you correctly, we are removing the 7 and the 15, making them part of the 9 in some funky way.
Yeah.
And then I hear we have a new route, the 29.
Yeah, so that's so basically the 29 is for all intents and purposes the 20 as it operates north of downtown, with some exceptions.
Okay. Because right now the 20 does not go by the main library.
Or yeah, it's kind of weird. So like some parts of it are like the 20, but I know like they've tried to. I called it like a bunch of spaghetti, right?
Okay.
Because like the routes just kind of like went, especially in St. Pete, like meandered. So there's less meandering. So to try to just create straight lines, because that's just how transit works best. So
It does.
yeah, different parts of routes are going to be absorbed differently into the structure, if that makes sense. But that's why I think it'll be a great exercise for everybody to like really hone in and see, okay, how would this actually like impact my trip? And this is why certainly a lot of outreach is going to be needed even after the board vote.
Okay. Are there any other routes that are being eliminated? Well, we said there are no routes being eliminated, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I will say, I mean, overall, there might be a few fewer routes, but pretty much everywhere that has service within a half mile today will still have service, and most places will still have service within a quarter mile. Like, I know there's a few segments that are being removed or changed. For example, another weird zone. So right now, the 67 goes on Hercules and Clearwater. So there's not a whole lot of ridership here, but there's a little bit. So we would propose to make this an on-demand zone, similar to how we have in Safety Harbor.
Okay.
And then there's a few segments where folks might have to walk a few additional blocks where there's not too much ridership. So for example, 5th Avenue southeast of Grand Central, that area wouldn't have service.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And one other thing, I thought I heard you say some of the bus stops are going to be eliminated and we're going to get new ones or something. I would like to see, because at the normal bus stops, there's a sign at the top and there's a sign at the bottom. And the one at the bottom has that number that you put in your phone to find out when the next bus comes.
Yeah.
I have encountered numerous of those where some jack whatever has decided to deface it or take it off or okay. I would like to see the bus number, not only at the bottom, but also at the top, and possibly you could put it at the top and on the back side, because these people are not carrying around ladders to deface those bus stops.
Yeah.
And when you get to those bus stops and you want to know when the next bus is coming, if it's defaced, you really don't know what bus stop you're standing at. And if it was at the top, they're not going to be able to reach it to deface it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to cost that much more to put it at the top, on the back, and the front. And I think it would help, because people that ride the bus are going to know that, okay, well, if you stretch it out here, look, moron, I can still see it up there. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, that's certainly something we can look at. I mean, we haven't necessarily discussed that yet as part of this effort. I know we've been in meetings with the marketing comms team before about what bus stop signs could look like in the future. So that's certainly something we could take back to the team as we might look at how we change our bus stop signage.
Okay.
Thank you for the comment. Anyone else?
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, everybody. I always love presenting to y'all.
Yay,
Good
Jacob!
job.
Thanks, everybody.
So next item of our agenda, do we have any members of the committee have any comments? Is this your chance to let staff know about any issues, ideas, or questions you may have about the system? We kind of like already asked many questions. Is there any other? Okay, go ahead.
I think it's important for our advertising and public announcements, placards, etc., to be up to date and relevant. So with the advent of the Rays baseball team announcing that they will abandon Tropicana Field for the Hillsborough County location of Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, our Sunrunner advertises a ride to the game is obsolete. And I think we should strive to be correct because of the public and vacation people that comes. And also, are we looking forward to the fact that could we have transportation from Pinellas County to the games? Because if we don't coordinate on PSDA, because if we don't coordinate that starting now, it's not going to coordinate after baseball season starts.
Probably not. It's federally, what you're talking about is considered charter service, and we are federally forbidden from doing that. I mean, that's why we can't run over to the Bucks games either. So we would have to establish a regular route and then sync it up with Hart to get there at every game. And if it's as long as it's a regular route and it's always operating, that's fine. But no transit agency in the country is allowed to just run service to and from a sporting event or a special event like that.
Okay, and I have another comment. I'm dissatisfied with the bathrooms that we have available to the public at our bus stop locations like Clearwater, Pinellas Park, Grand Central Station. I would like to see us adopt a policy that our CEO, our restrooms are so clean that our CEO uses them. And if used to be, Tampa had a terrible situation at Marion Station. What they did was they put people like restroom attendants, and you cannot use, supposedly, you're not allowed to use a restroom unless you have a bus pass. You're not allowed to take your backpack and your shopping cart and everything you own into the restroom. And they have the ability, because they have, like at Net Park and at their bus stations, they have someone that's like a dedicated janitor. So I guess it's hiring 3 more employees. And if the situation arises, just like I've been on buses where somebody's vomited or somebody spilled something. When they got to the bus stop, they had somebody there to clean the bus up. And another thing, this room is nice and clean. If we came in this room and there was trash all over the floor, it was dirty, disgusting, and everything else, a lot of people would still have a tendency to throw trash on the floor because they, oh, nobody else is cleaning up. If we have something that looks nice, people have more of a tendency to keep it clean. And there are large-scale places like cruise ships, like Bucks games, like a lot of other places, Walmart, are able to keep their public restroom facilities looking pretty nice because they actually pay attention to them instead of just letting them be out there for people to destroy. And I think that it can be done if, also they put security guards. I mean, I would like to see more attention made to them, and also not having those prison toilets. When you go into a gas station, they at least, and I've worked at gas stations before, and they have a tendency to attract the sick, lame, and lazy, and I've had the unfortunate opportunity to have to clean those places up, but at least it did get cleaned up, so the next person that came didn't get a bad taste in their mouth. And I would really like to, I know that there are people sitting in this room, it's not the best subject to talk about, that don't want to use our public facilities because they're nasty. And I would like to see more attention made, and I would really like to see it on some of our buses. Our bathrooms are so clean, our CEO uses them.
Okay.
I agree.
Thank you. We have Mark also raising a hand.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. First, a while ago, I brought up a concern about buses pulling out of Grand Central Station and making left-hand turns out of the station onto Central Avenue, going to 34th Street, making another left-hand turn, and then making a third left-hand turn onto First Avenue South. Now, the left-hand turn lane between Central Avenue and First Avenue South on 34th Street can barely fit a Pinto in it, let alone a bus. And when the buses make that left-hand turn, they tend to back up traffic on 34th Street beyond First Avenue North, causing major traffic headaches. I was wondering if it could be changed that the routes, instead of pulling out and making 3 lefts, can simply just make 2 rights. Make a right out of the terminal at Grand Central, and then make another right at 31st Street instead. Traffic down there is getting congested, especially during rush hour, like right now or in the mornings when I'm on my way to work. And for the buses, they have to make 3 left-hand turns and wait at 1, 2, 3 traffic lights at least. It can really hold up getting back on schedule after being at Grand Central. Also, the Route 14, the buses cross at Grand Central and they share a bay. There is an open bay at Grand Central. I don't know why they can't use that. And my last thing about Grand Central is it possible to have the Manatee County bus that comes into Pinellas County stop at our facility for ease of transfer?
There's a bus that comes up here from Manatee.
Yeah, it's number 19.
Okay, where does it stop now?
It just stops on 34th Street.
Goes over there.
Yes, it only stops on 34th Street and then continues on to Bay Pines.
Can I ask Mark a question? Yeah. Who's on? Hey, Mark. Can you hear us?
Yes.
I was just curious, how long does it take you, if you got in a vehicle or Uber or something, to go from all the way down in Gulfport to your work?
15 to 20 minutes.
Really? Because I was thinking it seemed like a long hike, you know, I know if you've ever taken the
Yeah, for me to get to work on time, I start work at 10. I like to be here by 9:30. I have to leave my house at 5 minutes to 8, go to Grand Central, transfer from Grand Central, and take the 52 from Grand Central all the way to the lay-by, and then catch an Uber from the lay-by over to the building I work in.
we all feel.
And I get here at about
We're
10
all
after
feeling
10 after 9.
stoned, like, oh. I've taken in the old days when I was just a 19 from down by Eckerd College all the way to Tarpon Springs.
Oh, that's like-
And I can't
yeah,
remember
I
how long
remember
it
that.
took. But man, by the time you get there, you feel like you've been through some kind of traumatic, you know. I have a different question. Sorry. The restroom issue is, you know, I think we all feel that pain, and how you rectify it. I just wanted to make this comment. I have the unfortunate experience to go to Marion Transit Center, not frequently, but pretty regularly. And that new policy is, in my opinion, I understand the advantages, because that way, I assumed it was so that you don't get accosted in there or whatever. And so the security guard will not allow you to go in until the person comes out. I recently had like the nightmare experience. I had to go over there, took the 300X, and I was going to get on a Greyhound. Greyhound comes there now, and I had to take the Greyhound to Orlando. And at that particular time, they were using a like about a 18-passenger gasoline bus without a restroom in it. And it's quite a long trip because you stop in Lakeland. Anyhow, just so happened, I had to go use the restroom, and I got to Tampa, and it was in the morning. It was only like 3 people in line. But somebody either was having issues or whatever, you know, but they were in there for around 12, 14 minutes, and they wouldn't let anybody go in. And there's a urinal and a toilet in there, and all these people couldn't go in. So this is
Okay,
a very
but
difficult issue.
As I said,
Please.
we need to address that, so common sense tells you that one stall, one bathroom is not enough.
It is true.
So it's, your problem is resolved if they adopt my problem. They actually look at this and they say, well,
Building.
we can't have one bathroom here. Maybe we can have one bathroom at Pinellas Park. We can't at some of the other places. So being proactive and thinking about it and realizing what's going on, there is a solution that'll prevent your problem unless 200 people have to go to the bathroom all at once.
Yeah, but what would it be in that case?
More bathroom facilities.
So that's probably not gonna happen. So then, I can tell you, in my opinion, it's a train wreck in Tampa now. It's gone down. The homeless situation in Tampa has gotten way worse than just a few years ago. I mean, it's crawling, and there's just not enough facilities, and it's getting worse. I guess that's why they've changed it like this. But going down that route to restrict the usage is just like really, it's almost like shooting yourself in the foot. And in how my story ended, I was either gonna miss the bus, Greyhound, and it's a big nightmare. What happened was, on that day, that bus broke down, praise the Lord, and they brought a big bus that had a restroom in it, you know, one of the big Greyhound buses. And so what a wonderful blessing that was, and I couldn't believe that happened. It was very rare. I'd done that trip twice that week, and bam, here comes a big bus, and my situation was taken care of. But, you know, people are panicking. You know, you've got scheduling, you've got emergencies to need to use the facilities, and it is really a big issue. I don't know how to fix it, but I wouldn't restrict the usage like they're doing in Tampa.
Go ahead, Gene.
Not to belabor the point on the restrooms. It's an important one though, like, the type of restrooms that we have, particularly at Grand Central, make me not want to use them. I don't use them. When I'm at Grand Central, I have to use the restroom. Sometimes I walk to Walmart to use their restroom, and that's a 7 minute walk instead of using the restroom that's right there. Because it's it's gross and it's unappealing, and even when they clean, it doesn't look clean. And also, bless their hearts, whomever made these decisions back in the late 90s, early 2000s when they built Grand Central, to put those particular types of facilities with the single piece metal
Prison toilets.
yeah, toilets. That should not be what people who are paying us for the service experience. And I find it I find it very problematic that was the decision that was made. But I know we probably don't have any capital budget funds right now to at least replace those facilities. But we have to find something because it's not really tenable. At parks, at Pinellas Park, I didn't even know we have a restroom there. I'll go to Target. So, I'm just gonna be honest.
Yes, we need to make sure that those restrooms are accessible to the
Exactly.
physically challenged. Because Bob, where were we at? And they didn't have restrooms for the physically challenged. What was that? Was it Clearwater? You said, oh, they're gonna do it at the new.
Yeah,
location.
must have been Park Street.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Park Street was definitely built pre-ADA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and they said, oh, don't worry about it, Kim, it's gonna be taken care of in the new building.
But if you're ever at Park Street, ask the person in the booth. They will bring you into the staff bathroom that
Yeah.
is accessible.
I know, but I feel bad for other clients,
Mhm.
passengers, they don't know to ask, you know?
Thank you for your time. Okay, so I think we're moving to the other business. Is there any other business to discuss? Please raise a hand and I will call you on.
All right. Nobody else? I have the housekeeping for January.
Okay.
All right, so for January, we're gonna meet in person again.
Okay.
If you're interested in running for one of the offices, chair or vice chair, let me know. Just send me an email because we'll do the election of officers. You'll have a presentation on ridership to prove that this consistent lie that we only serve 2% of the population is very, very wrong. You'll see the beginning of that if you watch the committee meetings tomorrow, because Devin's going to be making that as well. Start thinking about any initiatives you want to work on for 2025, because that's coming up. And if we're lucky, we will have a new projector.
Oh.
This room's supposed to be refitted by
Next month.
January, so we'll get rid of the big yellow stain. And that's pretty much it for housekeeping. Thanks.
So this meeting is adjourned. No meeting in December. Next meeting, as Bob said, January 21st at 4 p.m. in person.
We'll see you next year.